You're very impressive with your laptops. It's like we're at school.
It's okay. It's all right. I don't mind.
Well, to formally welcome you, welcome to this talk at Google. And I'm Diane Solinger. I'm the manager of Googler's Social Responsibility. Our team is the one that is launching and hosting the hunger relief campaign that you may have seen throughout Google. And this is a part of the campaign. There's a three-legged stool with the hunger relief campaign. It's about learning about the issue, and then it's about taking some action, giving, and also volunteering. And there's been amazing activities across Google over the course of the last month where Googlers are stepping up to donate, to take the quiz to learn more about hunger, and then we make a gift on your behalf, or to volunteer in their local communities, kind of culminating next week with Alan Eustace's huge food drive here on the Mountain View campus. So thank you all for being a part of the Hunger Relief campaign and for being Googlers. You're fantastic and charitable people that amaze me every day at the interest and the spirit and kind of this unbridled will to try to save the world and do great things in the world every day. And thank you for being a part of the Hunger Relief campaign. If you want to learn more about it, you just go to Hunger Relief, and there's been some things on your chair as well. Take the quiz. $10 will be donated to a project of your choosing through a global giving platform. Some of the Oxfam projects are actually listed there as well. So to kick off today, I'm just going to introduce who our panelists are. We have a wonderful panel discussion here. Introducing Kristin Davis, star of Sex and the City and ambassador for Oxfam America.
Hi, how are you? I'm happy to be here. I have been to New York, Google. I'm getting educated on the Googlers. I'm very impressed.
We're impressed with you, too, for doing what you're doing. We have Ray Offenheiser, who is the CEO of Oxfam America. And Kristin serves as ambassador for Oxfam America, and she'll talk a little bit about her experiences. Susan Godwin is a farmer from Nigeria who's really, someone's going to tell us her personal story about hunger relief and how she's really making a go as a small farmer in her country and in her community and getting others inspired to do the same. And then we have... and we have Arti Seguera. Did I say it right? Close.
Sequera.
Sequera.
It's fine. It's fine.
So sorry.
You got the first name.
But you're Artie Party, right?
People have asked me if Party's my last name.
She's the host of Artie Party on the Food Network and was the winner of season 6 of the next great Food Network star, right? Fantastic. So I'm going to start really with an opening question to Kristin, because your story of getting involved with Oxfam, choosing Oxfam, and then some of the experiences that you have, we'd love to just start with you and hear why and what you're doing.
Absolutely. After the tsunami in 2004, I believe it was, in Indonesia, I was doing some research about who would be staying in the region and helping the farmers get their businesses back, because I'd been to Indonesia and I knew how they lived and how basic their businesses were and how it had really been taken away by the tsunami. And while giving to organizations that do the immediate relief in a devastating situation is obviously important, it's also important to think about helping the people develop their businesses back so that they can be self-sustaining. And what I learned in that research was that Oxfam kind of specializes in that. We specialize in a lot of things. We do immediate disaster relief as well, but we stayed in Indonesia for 5 years. And then we continued on. We're still there. And after Katrina, we stayed in New Orleans and the whole Gulf region for 5 years as well, helping people get their lives back and their businesses back. So that's the thing for me that I think is so special and impressive, because it's not an easy thing to do. You really have to commit. You really have to be in a region and understand the culture and the people and what's going on for them, and kind of be able to do a lot of different things to be able to help people be self-sustaining, which is the goal. Our goal is not to create a culture of need where you're constantly needing an aid organization. We want people to be back up on their feet, which is what people all over the world that I've met in my travels with Oxfam wants as well. Everybody wants to work. Everybody as we will hear today, wants to be able to make a living and feed their family. And that's what Oxfam tries to help people do if they're in a situation where they can't. So that's personally what I really love. I've traveled all around the world, predominantly Africa. I focus on women's issues because they really affect everyone. They affect the children. They affect the next generation. And there's obviously many, many issues for women around the world. And I love it. If I could just quit my regular job, sometimes I would just try to be Ray, though I would never live up to him.
So tell us.
That was a short story.
No,
Tell me
that's fantastic.
anything else. Okay.
So, with respect to women and some of the women that you've met in your travels, I saw a part of the BBC clip when you were in the refugee camp. Was that near Somalia? Was it Somalian refugees in Kenya, or where was that?
Those were Somalian refugees in Kenya, just over the border from Somalia. And that was actually a trip that I had gone on to go to Tanzania to launch the Female Food Hero, which is what Susan ended up winning, which was a competition we were having for female farmers, which is now a huge predominance of the farmers in especially sub-Saharan Africa, but all over the world. There's most of the farmers and small like private farms are women now, which is a little known fact and quite fascinating. And we were there, we were meeting these incredibly successful women farmers in Tanzania. They were growing 12 different crops. They were, feeding their families and their sisters' families and everyone's families, and it was very inspiring. And at the same time, this horrible drought was unfolding in northern Africa, and we were getting these numbers of how many people were flooding into Dadaab. So we were so close that we decided that we should go and try to see the situation for ourselves. And when we got there, it was a really, horribly shocking contrast to see the number of people who literally had no safety net available to them in any way for themselves or their children or their families. I could talk for an hour about it, but it was shocking that in a modern world that we live in today, where things are accessible, there is enough food to feed everyone in the world, yet it is not available to everyone in the world. And to see just the dire, dire, dire circumstances of those people was a really heart-wrenching.
Yep.
Everyone tries to keep me from talking about this because I can't talk about it without crying. But it is the truth. I mean, there are really shocking situations that happen, and there are a lot of people who are trying to help, so it's great to be part of the trying to help
Absolutely, and kind of the longer term sustainability piece of it is what Susan's representing. You mentioned women taking care of their families, their communities, bringing others in through farming. So tell us about your experiences, Susan, and what's happening in your life, because your life's really been transformed.
Good afternoon all. I'm Susan Godwin, a small-scale farmer from Nigeria. In fact, I was farming for more than 10 years, but I don't have enough food to eat. With my family, talk more to send my kids to school. Not until when I meet with the Oxfam program, which was sent down to my community, of which I enrolled myself into the program. And after receiving all the training was all about capacity building for small-scale farmers, which I adopt the new method of farming. We are also trained to do some little business attached to our farm work, and also trained to add a little value to whatever we produce so that we can have more money. So when I get that knowledge, I quickly put it into practice, and I see my lifestyle was changing. I can be able to feed my family well, assist other women in my community to take good care of their own family too. And my life was changed to good with my community. So that is the short story I have to give for now. Maybe later I explain more.
Susan, what are your crops? Because you had to learn a whole new way of farming, but then you also changed what you were planting, correct? So you're growing what? What do you grow?
My major crop I grow was yam and peanuts. I farm a little of sorghum to feed my family and cassava, but the major crop was yam and peanuts.
And
but it wasn't even enough for me to eat with my family at the beginning, but now things change.
And you're selling peanut butter, peanut oil, right? And you're leasing your equipment to other people now too? So you've got a business going on here.
Yeah. So when I quickly adopt that method, for the first year, my harvest changed. I was having no less than not more than 5 bags of peanuts in a year. But now I have up to 17 for that year. And my yam, I normally get less than 1,000 tubers of yam a year, but I was able to get up to 2,000 for that year, which I know I have much money. I have to sell some of the crops that I produce to buy a machine to add value to my own peanuts that I grow. So the first machine, I was using it, and I was the first person to start that business in my community. So the business was moving so fast. I was doing it commercially for people and use this to do my own personal groundnut that I farm from the farm also to get more money. And out of the money, I work for people. I normally buy some of the groundnut and store, added to my own. When the market goes up, then I sell it to have more money. So I was doing it like that for the first year. The second year, I now have much money. I have to go and buy 5 more machines, which I needed to add more value to my peanuts. This time around, I wanted to maybe struck oil out of the peanuts and have the oil and sell out the groundnut cake. So this time the machine are 6, and I needed more hand to operate the machine. I have to employ other women, give them a little chance of job opportunity so that they will work on the machine and I get them paid at the end of the day. So when we were doing this, I also get them into group and encourage them that the money they are getting, they should not spend it all, but they should try to be saving something so that they can have money to start their own businesses. So, of which they did. After the first year, they have a little money that they can start their own businesses. After 1, 2, 3 years, some of them now have their personal machine that they are working on, and they even employed other less privileged women too to work for them, and they get them paid. They also encourage them to do some group savings so that at the end of the year, they can also get something to start their own business with. So this has been helping us. Before, normally the men take charge of everything that we have. If they want, they only train the boys, leaving the girls that their education has no value. Moreover, they will go to their husband's house. So we women, we are suffering it. We don't have means to help our daughters. We look at it the way we suffer. We may not want our daughter to come and face the same thing tomorrow. So with this little chance I have, I now put more knowledge on the women that we should train our ladies so that tomorrow they will help our community and help fight back this bad situation that we are living in. Because down there in Nigeria, you find out what the woman has is for the man and not for the woman. You don't have right to spend whatever you have for yourself. Let's say I have a mother now, I have much money, I want to build a house for my mother, I cannot do it for my father. Unless my husband agreed before I will do it. So that has been a problem. We now look at it, if we can send our daughters to school, maybe tomorrow they will know their rights. They will know how to fight this thing back and we will live better than we are doing now. So in most of the community, there are a lot of challenges in doing this. Because the men normally come to me and say, Susan, you better stop this thing that you are putting our wives into. Why don't you make them to come and work for you and have money? Our wives were answerables to us all days. When we tell them to eat, they eat. When we tell them not to eat, they sleep hunger. Why are you forcing them to eat all the time now? Our wives are making troubles with us because they have something at hand. We don't want it. We want you to stop it. But I always tell them that they should be kind with them because the women also have rights. They want something that will help their future and their children also. So I talk to some of them in that way, and some get to understand. Now they are saying, Susan, don't forget our wives, because our wives help us to take care of our family. If there is anything good, you try to let our wives know so that you can carry them along. But some up to now, they don't understand. They keep on fighting. At times, they even harass my husband. You should tell this your wife, Susan, to stop taking our wife outside. Even though so, we are going to sue us. So it has been like that. But with the more hands that are coming in, and the women are getting what they want and taking good care of their family, I think almost all the problem is coming to an end. Now the women themselves have a lot of machines they work on. So when I was seeing my market cannot longer move as it is before, we have more than 50 houses now that have machine on their own to operate, just because of one particular person that started the business. The business is all over the community now and around the community. So I quickly leave that business onto them. I jumped into selling the machine parts. Because when the machine goes spoil,
smart. This is one smart
if the
entrepreneur
machine
here.
goes spoil, you have to travel to the town. If you are buying a note of 30 naira, I don't know how to say it, your money, so please pardon me. If you are buying a note of 30 naira, you have to spend 300 naira to go to the town, your transportation, before buying that note of 30 naira. So instead of that, I then bought the spare parts of the machine from the town and bring it, I said, at 40 naira to them, so which help them to save their transport. And my market is also moving. So in one of the challenges I have, after attending the World Food Prize in Iowa, when I went back home on the 24th of December, when I gathered some men to go and help me do my heaps in my farm, only to go there to discover that the heaps that was done on my behalf by my husband, the heap was destroyed. So they now quickly called my attention that my heap has been destroyed. Am I aware of it? I say I don't. So when I went to the person that I hired the land, because as a woman, you don't own a land. You have to hire from the men and work on it. And when you want to hire the men, now make sure that the land they give you is not a fertile land, because they don't want you to get enough crop. When you get so much harvest, maybe you look down on them. So the land that was given to me,
a lot of social norms that you're trying to change while you're doing
Yeah.
this, and it's
so
hard.
from that, the heaps was destroyed, and what I get to do now, I now buy cow, 2 of the young cow, because when I was here, I was taken to farm. I see so many farms with rearing animal. I said, okay, if there will be no land, that will not weigh me down. Let me transfer to animal rearing. So that is what I'm trying to do now.
Wow,
Thank you.
3 businesses going on there. Woo! Thank you.
What a great story, Susan. You're so impressive. Wow.
So, Ray, let's kind of take it up a level and talk about the food system in general. And give us, first of all, Oxfam's mission, what you do, why you exist, and then explain to us the whole systematic kind of issue with respect to the fact that there's enough food in the world, but it's not getting to everybody.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, thinking a little bit about Susan's story, what you're looking at here is an entrepreneur, feminist, and a human rights activist all rolled up into one. So kind of an interesting embodiment of, I think, what we're after here. Maybe just quickly, Oxfam's an international development humanitarian organization, and our mission is really to, in some ways, to echo what Susan said, to create lasting solutions to hunger, poverty, and social injustice, not to actually be remaining in these countries forever. Our hope is that one day we leave, and people like Susan are sort of taking over and running the country and providing food for their population in ways that are going to meet everyone's needs. We live and work in those regions, and so we know the hunger and poverty challenges quite well. There's 900 million people in the world today that are hungry. This is a UN statistic that's pretty recognized. It's a very, very big number, almost 1 billion. In fact, it crossed 1 billion in 2008 with the hunger crisis, and it's fallen back a bit as conditions have gotten a little bit better. I think one of the great ironies that Kristin actually mentioned is the fact that we live in a world where actually there is enough food actually to go around, and the issues of hunger have more to do oftentimes with justice and access than they have to do with pure supply. And we saw that dramatically with the food price crisis in 2008. It wasn't a question of supply, it was a question of whether people could actually afford to buy the food. And so for us, the real issues around hunger are not just simply whether we produce enough or is a pure nutrition problem. It's actually a justice question. And it's oftentimes about issues that we don't often talk about when we talk about food and hunger. We think all we need to do is provide more food, and actually that may not be the solution. It's often about justice, it's about access, about market failure, it's about policies, it's about abuse of power in different contexts, whole range of complicated issues that sort of constitute sort of the reasons in different national contexts why people aren't getting food and aren't adequately nourished. At the end of the day, these are the kinds of issues that Oxfam tries to address in our policy work, and we can talk a little bit more about that further into the conversation. But I think maybe the bottom line here is if we're going to win the global hunger game, if I can kind of call it that, I think what we need to be really thinking about is changing the rules which enable people to get access, get investment of the sort that that you just heard Susan getting and taking advantage of those investments, investing in women, and thinking about how we deal with some of the other big challenges like climate change that loom on the horizon. And the big challenge, maybe thinking forward, is we will be a world with 9 billion people by 2050. And there's some real challenges as to how we're going to feed that 9 billion by 2050 when we think about issues of climate change, impacts on environment, impacts on productivity. Do we have the approaches and the will to kind of meet that challenge?
I mean, it really is, it's a right to have food, and almost, right?
Well, in some countries, actually, the interesting thing is India has actually made food a right. And they're trying to figure out, there you go. And it's an interesting question. I mean, one of the things Oxfam had come to realize was that there are when the Human Rights Charter was signed in 1947, it was about civil and political rights, but it was also about social, economic, and cultural rights. But during the Cold War, we lost sight of that. But at the end of the Cold War, I think there's a real opportunity to ask questions like, should there be a right to education? Should there be a right to food? Some of these basic needs or a right to sort of health services. And countries, other countries around the world are actually embracing this. And the right to food is one that, in the case of India, has been embraced. And actually, they have programs now to be executed to actually realize that right for their populations. They're not always working as well as they could, but they are, in fact, underway.
So at Oxfam, you're kind of dealing literally at the highest policy level, but also in supporting courses like Susan took to transform the way she farms. It's just kind of this whole spectrum of ways of dealing with the issues. Yeah.
I mean, what we've learned over the years is that we can't solve these kinds of issues at the local level. In some ways, we could have great programs, and we did for many, many years at the village level and in certain regions of countries. But we could address those problems and have this sort of satisfaction that we've solved the problem in a sort of, if you will, an island of well-being surrounded by a sea of misery. And that we realized that we had to kind of look beyond the problem at the local level and figure out what was actually keeping those people poor. Why were they not accessing inputs for agriculture or credit? And that the answer that we came up with was that poverty is not necessarily about the absence of those goods for people. It's about questions of access. And we end up defining poverty as social exclusion. And then trying to figure out if poverty is social exclusion, that means there are certain barriers that are limiting people's access. And so what are those barriers? How can they be addressed? Oftentimes they're about ethnic conflict. Sometimes they're about policies that governments have in place. And it leads us to be much more, I suppose you might say, systems thinkers, like many of you here in the room are, in thinking about the poverty problems and trying to sort of analyze what are the big sort of systemic barriers that can unleash the kind of human potential that you just heard unleashed in Susan's African village? Just think about, what has been spawned by her initiative and those of her sisters in her particular village, and why wasn't that happening a long time ago? What was limiting that from happening? And how can we attack these kinds of issues systemically and leverage far greater change?
And my team knows I'm a big fan of this book called Switch, which Chip and Dan Heath wrote, very much focused on the idea of bright spots. Susan's a bright spot. It works. So how does Oxfam, or how do you and your celebrity, and you, RT, as well, how do you take something that's working well and share that story so that it is replicated and find out the things that made that, what was the secret sauce with Susan's that made it work for her?
Well, I think, Ray is our president, right? And so luckily, of Oxfam America. So luckily, he is, incredibly knowledgeable about everything, which is amazing. And, to pick his brain is a wonderful thing. And he can deal up here on the policy level. I do not mess with that. I let the professionals do that. What I get to do is I get to meet people like Susan in their villages, in their countries, and see what just some knowledge, some effort can do. And to me, it's completely life-changing for me as well, because it doesn't take, I feel like sometimes what happens for us here in America, I know for me before I started my travels with Oxfam, you feel like these issues are overwhelming and that they cannot be changed, and why should we try? Sometimes you get really down, like it just seems like there's so many problems in the world and even at our own country, like you're just overwhelmed. But once you go out and you see how hard people want to work, like Susan was there wanting to work this whole time. But because, we've seen time after time after time when the husbands are like, no, no, no. And you're like, why would you say no to your woman starting a business? It is so crazy for us to think that. But there are really ingrained social issues. Like if a woman is not allowed to own land, just mull that over. I've been to so many countries where that's true, where their husbands might die, they and their children are kicked out of the house, and the husband's family takes the house and the land. And that's just how it is. Then a little bright spot, as you said, Mozambique, which was one of my first trips, group of women lawyers had left Mozambique to get their law degrees and had come back to help their country. And part of what they did was they really focused on trying to change the law so that women could own land. So they worked very hard for a very long time, and they eventually did change this law. But the problem being, nobody knew that the law was changed, partly because there are 26, I think, local tribal languages in Mozambique, something like that, and they are really hard to understand. And so no one was really communicating with everybody, and also they couldn't read the papers. So what these women lawyers then thought, and this is part of what I love about Oxfam, is they helped them. They thought, well, we need to get the word out there. How can we do that? Well, we could start a radio program where different people would come who spoke these different tribal languages and talk about it so that people might hear it. Then the next thing they did, which we got to see, was they started a little theater troupe that would go to the villages, and you'd sit on the ground, and the little theater troupe would come in. It would be all women, and the women would dress up as the men, and they'd do like it was like a comedy thing, but it was all about AIDS. So all of us were like, should we laugh? What should we do? It was really confusing, but it was about how the husband dies of AIDS, and then the woman feels she must marry the brother so that she doesn't get kicked out of the house. And then a woman would come in and say, no, 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 you don't have to. You can own the land. And everyone would be like, ah. And we were like, this is amazing. So it was finding the way to get the word out that this law had been changed after these women worked so hard to change the law. And that's Oxfam helping these people to come up with this project and that project to get the job done. And then you see that women can own their own land and farm and still have a home for their children and aren't put out on the street by, people who aren't necessarily nice to them. What was the question? I'm so sorry.
Fabulous bright spot there.
Well, maybe
Welcome
just...
to my mind. I want to bring Artie into the conversation as well, because I think there's this idea of local too.
It's just telling the stories. That's all. I'm just here to
great
witness.
Stories, Kristin.
Thank you.
That was
That
awesome.
is my job. I'm here to witness. That is how I look at it, and I do, because I do feel like it is inspiring. I feel like Susan's story, like hearing Susan's story, you're like, wow. I mean, that is amazing. And I could help somebody do that. And that makes you feel connected, and it makes you feel hopeful. So that's how I look at my job.
And Artie, I think something too. I mean, you're a foodie. Let's face it, right? You're a foodie, but you've also been really kind of a bit of an activist. I think about saying, what you can do to make a difference in your daily life that helps with food-related, security issues.
Yeah, well, I think that, and I don't think I'm alone here, so please raise your hand. That probably the most we've ever been told growing up about what we can do about world food shortages is clean your plate, because there are starving people in insert country here, right? I mean, who has heard that growing up? That is not going to do anything. So the thing that I love about Oxfam and the Grow campaign, if I can throw that out there, is that it makes it very easy for us here to make choices in the way that we shop, the way that we cook, the way that we don't waste quite as much of our vegetables. Super guilty of that. That we can make these very simple choices and have a real ding-dang impact on food shortages around the world. My dad, his side of the family is a farming family. They grew rice, and so I've heard the stories of what happens when you don't have enough rice that year. It's pretty dire. So I guess in a way it's pretty personal to me, and so it's very empowering on this level. I mean, I think the thing that is so amazing about listening to Susan is that She sounds very proud. And that's it. We're not just talking about food here. Food is sort of one of those sacred things where when you feed somebody or when you teach someone how to cook, if I could be so bold, I mean, you're sort of telling them, I care about you. You know, you're important and you're able to do a lot of things, you know, and I believe in you. And so I think that that's why this is such a powerful campaign. And
Explain the Grow campaign a little bit more, because I'm not sure if Googlers know much about it.
Okay, I have a terrible memory. But
there are Ray here as the backup, right?
Ray, back me up, buddy. So there's 5 steps. There's 5 different things you can do. So one of them is, and you guys might already do it, Meatless Monday. Not a big deal. Eat some beans instead of some meat. And that, raising meat takes up an awful lot of water, a ton of water. And so if you just did that, you can save like 14 bathtubs of water just by just not eating meat on Monday. That's pretty simple. Especially because you guys have an amazing cafeteria here. And the fact is, you make a difference with the money you spend. So if once a week you're not buying meat, you're telling people something, Another thing is to waste less. We waste like 1 in 16 apples, is that right? So instead of doing that, buy less. Go to the store a little more often. That's what I do. And then, you have to come up with a strategy. So whatever's left at the end of the week, you make a soup, or you make a frittata, or you make a scramble, or you put it in some sauce and put it over pasta. So you just don't waste those vegetables because what? It took energy and it took money and it took, fuel to get those vegetables to you, or, whatever it is you're eating. And then what's another one, Roy?
Buy seasonally.
Buy seasonally. I love this. I mean, we live in California, so, we're really spoiled this way. I was just in Orlando, and I was like, no slight against Orlando, but I'm just saying, like the things we get at the supermarket here, come on. It's amazing. When you buy seasonally, it's just going to taste better because it's meant to be growing right now. It will also be cheaper, and that also means it took less energy and less fuel, et cetera, to grow. And one of the secrets, if you can just shut me up anytime because I'll keep going. The one thing about cooking seasonally is it's almost like God's gift to us because think about what grows in one season, right? Let's take the winter. Winter, California standards. So you have these hearty greens like kale, let's just say. Kale happens to go wonderfully with butternut squash, which happens to go wonderfully with hearty herbs like sage. It's almost like God's like, here you go, cook. It's a lot simpler when you think about things that way. And also, when you eat seasonally, you tend to crave those things. So in the summer when it's hot, you're not craving butternut squash, you're craving tomatoes and cucumbers and watermelons, very light fruit and vegetables. So, you're actually doing your body a service. And then here is the thing that's so awesome. Not only are you doing yourself some good, you're doing people across the world from you some good. It's like, come on, it's so easy. It's so easy. I just
and supporting local farmers often too, right?
Yes, buying fair trade and buying local, and fair trade chocolate. If you're not buying chocolate, now you have your excuse.
So Ray, let's kind of talk about the big farming issues. So the ADMs of the world. Dare I say ethanol with you? I know that's kind of maybe no, I shouldn't go there. No, okay. But really, when we're thinking about the systemic issues with respect to food and security for food, and then you have kind of the farming that we've gone to in most of the developed world, kind of big, massive conglomerate farms, versus really what we're talking about, even for the rest of the world, but also for us, to buy local, small farms. There's a big kind of, I don't know, it's just a rub there between big business and really probably what's maybe the better thing for all of us. Tell us where Oxfam stands on those things.
Well, let me, since this is a room of systems thinkers, I was told that everyone at Google's a systems thinker. Maybe I'm going to sort of venture into this sort of world of talking about the global food system, and the fact that we live in a world where basically much of the world subsists on 8 basic grains, and I'm not going to name them all for you. You can probably figure out. Well, you can start with rice, wheat, corn, and go on down the list. But and people eat some 257 other crops. around the world, but the big grains are ones that sustain life around the world. 2008, we had this incredible event happen, which was that we suddenly discovered, after 30 or 40 years of assuming we had abundant global food supply, that those grain stocks had sort of run out. And all these economists sort of woke up one day and realized, wow, what happened here? Why are there no sort of grain stocks? And when the grain stocks ran out, the prices started just to spiral out of control. And they went up some 300% around the world. Now, think about if you're Susan and you're living in Nigeria and you're a subsistence farmer and you're having a bad year, as Artie said, and suddenly you may have to buy food in the local market and you can't produce enough to eat, and the prices have gone up 300%. And on average, you generally spend 75 to 80% of your whatever cash you have on food. Well, this was like an impossible situation for poor families all over the world. It was a little easier maybe if you were a rural subsistence farmer because you had some food. If you're an urban or poor, you really had no options because there was no food around you. So what happened? 38 countries were rioting. Some people would claim some of the Arab Spring is related to actually food price crises. These prices went up in 2008. They haven't come down. So the world is still being faced with this sort of food price crisis, and these stocks have not been restored. So what was going on? And this is where I kind of want to help you sort of see some of the linkages so that you can sort of apply sort of all your systems thinking to kind of thinking about this food system in a way that will be helpful to you and simplify it for you. Climate change. Well, there was a drought in Australia for 7 years in the wheat growing regions of Australia. The wheat crops collapsed. And so the wheat prices were just going up and up and up, and the stocks were falling down tremendously. The United States, Russia had a drought. The winter after the end of the Australia drought, more crisis in the wheat markets. So climate change suddenly is starting to affect our global food supply. So if any of you are wondering about whether climate change is real, believe me, in the world we live in and looking at these food supplies, it is really real and it's here to stay. And in places like Africa, in various parts of it, the Somalia famine that Kristin talked about, that was about climate change impacts in a drought-prone region where we used to see droughts every 7 years. Now we see them every 3 years. Other issue, ethanol. 40% of the corn grown in the United States goes into your gas tank. Why? Because we have legislation in the United States that originally thought was going to be part of a solution to the climate problem and reducing carbon in the atmosphere. Turns out it's not actually the case. But we have laws now that require 10% of every gallon of gas you put in your gas tank is ethanol-based. And that is a congressional mandate that's going to go up to 15%. This is the first time in history we've had a relationship between food and fuel. And we're taking that corn out of the global food supply. What's the implication of that? Higher prices because you have less supply. So that's another sort of critical issue. Global oil prices, fossil fuel, and industrial agriculture, to Diana's point, this is what has sustained us here in the United States. But actually, it's a very expensive way to do agriculture. And when you think about the fact that you're going to have increasing demand for fossil fuels globally, and that fossil fuels provide inputs for fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, if oil prices keep going up and up and up, which they're predicted to do, inputs for people like Susan are going to go up and up and up, which take her out of the production cycle because she can't afford the inputs. Which is also, if you remember, there was the fuel prices went up in 2008, 2009 as well. So there were all of these sort of confluent sort of factors coming together that drove this crisis, and it's still staying with us. And these are things we've got to kind of keep an eye on going forward. Now, are there some things we can be thinking about and doing in order to address these issues? One, I mean, we need to be thinking about climate change and get serious about it. And we've got to ensure that our government, this government, does something about it. We consume 25% of the world's energy in fossil fuels. And that's driving a lot of this climate change that we're seeing. These degree changes that are being talked about, the implications for African countries, of the sort, of Nigeria and other parts of sub-Saharan Africa. What are the implications? More droughts more frequently, or extreme rain in Mozambique and Zimbabwe. We've seen the other version of this, which is
here today.
Massive flooding. Huh?
I'm just kidding. Or here today.
Or here today, exactly. Massive flooding, or Sandy in New York. Where that part of the world, you're sort of seeing these kind of dramatic climatic effects. The ethanol issue, we actually have been fighting, Oxfam's been fighting that one on Capitol Hill the last couple of years. Because of the fiscal crisis, we won on getting subsidies cut to the ethanol industry because they kept building more and more and more factories. But we still have the mandates, so we've got to get rid of those mandates. And that's
What's
something
happening with in some of your travels, though, or Susan? Are you seeing small farmers doing biofuels instead of planting crops? Any of that happening? I've read some articles like in Sierra Leone that's happening where small farmers are being displaced because biofuel crops are getting them more money.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere. I mean, when you go into a beautiful country, you'll be driving along, like Mozambique, Kenya. I think every country I've been to, you'll be driving along, you'll see beautiful little farms, little personal farms like Susan's, and then you'll see some really horrible, huge building, and you'll say, what's that? And they'll say a company's name that I don't want to say, but one of those big agricultural companies. And it's not a pretty farm, it's a horrible, huge building where they're like, controlling the atmosphere inside the building. I mean, it's a shocking thing, and you think, well, why are they doing that? Why don't they just farm like regular? Because they're not really interested in farming like regular.
So that's displacing farmers and it's displacing food, right, Susan? Are you saying that?
I would like to come in here because most of the foods, they buy it from the small-scale farmers. So they take it there, they make it, they store it. When the price go up, they now sell it. So even in Nigeria, this climate change also affect, although there was no flood, but in fact, some of our yam, yam normally produced from the soil, got bad this year. There is no good to have yam harvest. The yam leaves supposed to drop by October to December, where January is due for harvest. But our yam leaves started dropping since July, which even the seed this year, I don't think most of us are going to lose our seeds because of too much rain. When the rain started, it was heavily up to when it ends. So everywhere, even where places that water don't flow before this year, you find water flowing all over everywhere. So this is a issue that need to be addressed. If not so, it's going to cause more problem to what we are trying to fight hunger out, and this climate change may still make it difficult.
Can I just say one other thing just to connect the dots? Ray and I went up to Capitol Hill last year on International Women's Day, which does exist. It is real. Everyone always says, did you make that up? No, it exists all the way around the world. It's just America. We don't really celebrate it. So we decided 100 women from around the country with sisters on the planet went to Washington, and I went with Ray so I could learn. And we were talking to a bunch of Republicans, actually, and they were all very nice. And we were talking about a lot of these issues. And one of the things that we talked about and that they asked us about, because sometimes people say, well, why does it matter to us here what is happening in Nigeria? What is happening in Kenya? Well, first of all, from my travels, I mean, just as a human being, I think that it absolutely matters. I guess that is a moral decision that each person has to make for themselves. But separate from that, like Ray was saying, people rioted over the lack of food and the food prices.
The instability that it causes.
Thank you. Instability, not disability, but instability. Instability is not good for any of us anywhere. And, I could go down the list of things that have affected us. Obviously, we all know the things that have affected us. But the worse the situations get in these poor countries, we are all connected at this point. There is no way that we can say, well, we don't care. We are not affected by them, because we will be in one way or another. And that's why, even separate from just a humanitarian, I care about my brother type of an idea, which is how I feel, you also, from a very real, practical, monetary and security
point of view
issue, really, there are very, very real issues to this. And the worse we let it get, it's just dumb to let it get to that point, because once it gets to that point, it's very, very hard to pull it back.
No, I think it... No. Okay. And now to something a little more bright. No.
So what were we saying to this Republican group? I mean, we were doing a couple of things. One was we were encouraging support for the president's initiative on Feed the Future. President Obama has a big sort of international agriculture and food program that he's been trying to get through Congress. There's been a lot of resistance. And what is it about? It's about funding for small farmer agriculture. It's about sustaining our food aid program. The United States has the largest food aid program in the world. We provide 50% of the food aid to emergency situations around the world. It's about increasing sort of entrepreneurship and investment in entrepreneurship of the sort that Susan's doing. A really important program, something actually that you could actually encourage your congressman in this district or your districts in this general area to actually get behind. And we were challenging them on the ethanol question, and we were challenging them to take the climate change challenge real, to see it as a real challenge that needed to be confronted. And we were encouraging them to think about getting ahead of the climate change issue by addressing the question of whether we need to be investing in adaptation, helping some of these contexts to actually adjust their farming systems to deal with the challenges of climate change, to deal with resilience and adaptation, which is sort of the front end of dealing with climate change in the short to medium term.
Well, and we've been talking a lot on the global scale, but it happens here, right, in our backyards as well. And you don't think about hunger in the United States very much because we are, we have an obesity issue and a health issue and diabetes issues, but, it's very real. And that's why our food drive here at the Mountain View campus is so well supported because there's a definite bifurcation even in our community of the haves and have-nots. And I think there needs to be something that addresses that gap locally and globally at the same time. But RT, I love to cook as well. So I think we'll flank each other here at the ends here talking. But with what you're doing with the Grow campaign, how are you engaging others in that? Are you bringing in kind of the concept into the Food Network? Are you using that as a platform to talk about Grow or about local and Meatless Mondays?
Yeah, well, Meatless Mondays, thank goodness for whoever coined that term. You do some alliteration, suddenly it's a thing. I think that the country as a whole is already on board with that, which is kind of amazing. At least in terms of, I don't know if you guys flick through every food blog that there is, but every Monday someone has, Kristin's like, no.
No cooking?
Someone's putting a recipe up. But I think it is giving people recipes and putting ideas up there and helping people understand, okay, I'm going to go with you and I'm going to go to the farmer's market and beets are on sale. So what do I do? Buy 5 pounds of beets? Yes, you do. And then what do you do with them? And
you don't waste them at the end of the week.
You don't waste them.
You put them on your pasta.
Yes, and you eat the greens too because they're wicked good for you and tasty. But I think it's just sort of helping people. To me, it just keeps coming back to this, and I don't know why, but just feel empowered to actually not only sort of have a wider impact with in the world, but also feel empowered to just cook the ding-dang thing,
And it's like Kristin said, it's a bit of connecting the dots. If it is overwhelming, we don't feel like we can do a lot, we can do something. And to that, I wanted to kind of toss it to you about the great Oxfam Unwrapped campaign.
Absolutely. This is something that we do year-round, but then occasionally we do talk about it more, and this is one of those times. We do a really great project. It's called Oxfam Unwrapped, and we have a website, oxfamgifts.com. And it's something where you can go on. We have a variety of things. They are very reasonably priced, and sometimes you can send a goat to someone, or you can send worms to help a farmer change their soil. You can send bees. Beekeeping is a very amazing business that you can do on your own if you have the skill and the basic beginning tools. I've seen so many of these items in practice on my travels, and you kind of take them for granted here, like a handful of seeds. Again, something you think like a handful of seeds, really? This makes a huge difference, does it not? It is amazing. Like, people do not have access to a lot of the newer seeds that have been, through trial and error, come to be hardier seeds. And that makes a huge difference to a small farmer. So we have the training, people go and educate the farmers or the women about how to raise chicks. That's another amazing skill set that is very simple. People can do it at home. You don't have to leave your children. I've seen women have much smaller but very similar outcomes as Susan in terms of their husbands going, no, 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 no. And then these are people in the mountains of Mozambique by Zimbabwe. We met women who were literally living on less than $2 a month. Extreme poverty is defined as less than $2 a day. These people were living on less than $2 a month. I mean, it was extreme. And they lived in the most beautiful beautiful region. We called it Shangri-La, yet they really had nothing. And they were given organic seeds, and they were growing lettuce bigger than my head. They were so proud. They were living on these steep mountains, and we taught them irrigation methods. And then they were also raising chicks. And the husbands had said, no, absolutely not, absolutely not. My wife does not work. She's the mother of my children. Well, when they got that $20 bill at the end of the month, they were like, okay,
Money talks, right?
Yeah, and it was just really wonderful because that woman, you could see the pride that she took in what she had accomplished, and you would always ask the woman. We always would say, what did you do with your money when you had finished the project and made the money? And they would always say, I bought the school uniform so my child could go back to school. I bought the paper. So there are things we take for granted. If you can't buy your child paper, your child can't go to school. And school is often a tree that they are sitting under. That is school, but they can't go if there's no paper or pencil. So school books are on Oxfam Unwrapped. Really amazing things. School meals for the children, because a lot of the time they don't have a good meal, which we all know you need to eat to be able to think, to be able to learn. And the next generation is going to change the world, as my young faces now. Exactly, it gets them to school. But, the little young people here, you're so adorable, and it makes me feel hopeful that you're all interested in these kinds of things. But, when you're out in the world and you see these little kids and you see how much their mothers really want to send them to school, it's really moving. And it really makes a huge, huge difference when they are able to do so. So there's a lot of things on Oxfam Unwrapped related to the kids. Then there's a lot related to farmers, many of whom are women, tools, seeds, worms. Then there's a lot like ducks, goats, bees. You can plant a field that alpaca could graze in, because in South America you can raise alpaca. So it's a really fun thing. And so this is what I get every year for Christmas, because I don't need anything. I'm incredibly lucky in my life, as you all helped make me. So I need no gifts, and my family just gets to pick, and they all talk alike. I'm going to get her this, I'm going to get her that, and they get things that sometimes go together, which is really cute, like the different things that a school kid would need. And then the card goes to the recipient, and then the gift goes to people in need around the world. And it's pretty good feeling.
And there's a way for Googlers here today, and if you go to the website too. So it's
Absolutely.
What was that again?
Oxfamgifts.com.
.com. We talked about that. And at the back of the room, we have a badge to donate. Oh, it's over there. So you can swipe your badge, and you can pick a project. Whether it's, I think we have goats, we have school meals for 2 children, and bees. So 3 Oxfam projects that you can unwrap and swipe to give. And also, as we've talked kind of today, kind of high-level systemic stuff, how to cook to make a difference, how to shop to make a difference, how to give in a variety of ways, and how to help farmers. And they're Googlers have 20 hours of volunteer time off as a benefit that we want to encourage you to use, whether it's, helping at the biggest, highest level and trying to think about systemic issues that you might be able to use your brains to support, or even going out and going to the food bank and making sure that somebody gets a meal that probably wouldn't. Those opportunities are year-round, so it's not just now. Use that benefit. We really want to encourage you to do that. And when you volunteer 5 hours, we'll match that with $50. So every 5 hours gets $50 to the organization that you volunteered to. So use your gift match, use your donations for doers, use your benefits, use your volunteer time off. That's one of the things that makes Google such a great place. And we hope that you go out and help with this campaign. And thank you for being a part of this today.
You guys are amazing. I just want to say, Google culture is amazing. Woohoo!
And maybe for the activists in the audience, you can actually sort of join the sort of political work of Oxfam, the Grow campaign. We actually have sort of in the San Francisco area an action corps of people who actually want to do sort of activist work on some of the policy issues. So that's another option as well for those folks who want to do that kind of work.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for coming. Have a good day. Don't get too wet.